Okay, excellent. It's showing as live, so either the software has gotten a lot faster or... All right, either way, that's great. Okay, so it's been a long, long time since we've put something together here, and what I said was when I was doing this, the biggest thing I didn't want to do was just repeat myself over and over again if I had just basically the same kind of material. And although I've veered off in a different direction in terms of research and the kinds of things that I've been into, I still am based in the original research from which we were talking about. You know, the CIA FOIA stuff, the Mandela Effect stuff, the UAP UFO stuff, and finally there's something here that really piqued my interest that was very original. Buster and I were really excited to talk to Andrew and to get him on the channel here. And, Andrew, I just, welcome to SMQAI. We're very happy to have you. I read the New York Post article. It's posted down in the description for anybody who, is curious about it. We also posted it over on Twitter a few times. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. All right. I'm showing people are viewing. If they want to drop in the chat and let us know you're out there. I said hello. Oh, good. People are dropping in. Perfect. Excellent. All right. Here we go. The train is running again. All right. So, all right. First off, Buster, this article you sent me, it really blew me away. It was really interesting. It checked all the boxes. How did you come across this? And then we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So Andrew basically contacted me back in beginning of August with the article itself, and obviously after reading it, basically I was intrigued right away, and I kind of felt that he was basically somebody that would be a good guest on the show. And obviously he's on the show now, but it's taken a while to get to that point. But definitely there's a lot of things we can talk about today, not just UFOs, but there's definitely many things we can cover today. So if people haven't checked out the article, I would suggest that first. That gives sort of a basic background info on Andrew himself, but obviously, there's more things to talk about than just the article. We also have some very interesting footage to go over after the article.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Andrew, I have to ask you, for folks out there and for myself, I've read the article, and maybe if someone hasn't read the article, can you kind of give us some context to what's going on and to some of your experiences, just kind of, just a 101 kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So I've been trying to put the pieces together with a lot of this over the years. At first, I was having, some psychic type experiences. If somebody would pass away in my family, I would see some apparitions or shadow figures, but didn't think much of it. And then through the years as well, I would start to see what I would, become to know as some UFOs. I would see lights in the sky. But I just left it as that. I thought it was like an accident. Like I would be at a situation, I would be looking in the sky and I would see an object, and I was kind of just like a victim of circumstance. I didn't realize eventually that I would be able to initiate this contact and instigate it and actually help create this phenomena. I thought I was just literally going to be in the right place at the right time. And if I was lucky enough, great, I could see some UFOs. But what basically happened was I was in the United States Coast Guard, and in the late 90s, I had an encounter, and I thought at the time, once again, it was just literally me being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or right place at the right time. And I saw two silver objects in the sky. I was the night watchman on my boat down in the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean area, and it's the middle of nowhere. Pitch black, probably 1 in the morning, nothing going on. And I look with my binoculars on top of the ship, and I see two objects moving. So I thought, well, it's got to be a satellite or something of ours. Then I looked at the night vision goggles, and I could see them as well. and I could see them moving. So I called down to the bridge, which is where the officers are on a Coast Guard boat. And the officer came up and he took a look. And next thing I know, they're waking up the captain of the boat. And if they're waking up the captain of the boat at about, 1 in the morning in the middle of nowhere out while we're on patrol, something is going on, something that might be a little concerning. So next thing you know, there's probably about 20 people in and out of that top deck area. And we're all looking with night vision. We're all looking with regular binoculars. We're all looking with the naked eye. And I see the two silver objects. They had been traveling, it looked like in a formation, just like slightly staggered, like one was slightly behind the other at an angle, but they were going together, they were moving in sync. And I see them come together, and when they came together, they touched, and when they touched, they merged into one, and then they vanished. They did not shoot off in any direction. I didn't see it go left, right. Nothing. I didn't see a hole in the sky. I didn't see a trail. I didn't see an exhaust. Nothing. They just vanished. So I know that the other people on my boat, we were obviously very concerned because we had not detected anything on our radar system. And at that point, I was only 19 years old. So, what did I know? What did I know about UFOs or seeing something like this? I figured if the people on my boat, if they were worried about this, they would express their concern to me, and we would take it from there. But everyone was just in a state of shock, like we just couldn't believe what we just saw, what we just encountered. And I remember the next day, nobody spoke about it. Nobody said anything. And I just said, well, nobody told me I couldn't talk about this. Nobody brought me into a room and told me to shut up or to keep my mouth shut. Nothing like that at all. And hence, this is why I'm having this conversation with you. I have no clearance on that at all. And at that moment, I kind of just said, well, maybe it was just an isolated incident. Maybe it was just a one-time thing, and I'll never see that again. Well, it's interesting. Over the years, I kept having more paranormal type experiences, some UFO encounters, but same thing. It would just be, I thought I was observing it and being a victim of the circumstance. And then I saw a guy by the name of Dr. Stephen Greer, who claimed that he would be able to initiate contact with extraterrestrials and other types of, maybe angelic type beings. And I said, all right, well, this looks interesting. I don't believe the guy. I think he's full of it. But let me look into this. And then I saw all these ex-military witnesses that he had that came forward. And in 2001, they presented something in Washington at the National Press Club. And that really got my attention. And I started to realize, wow, there's a lot of ex-military guys like myself out there that are experiencing this stuff. And maybe I should connect with some of these people and find out what the heck is going on. I just knew that, whatever I experienced, I was pretty certain that it was not us, meaning it wasn't our military, because when you're on a military vessel, at least in 1999, 2000, if you saw another object that would cross the front or rear of your ship, they would have to identify themselves. They would have to let us know, okay, we're, a fishing vessel or another military craft or whatever they were, because if they didn't, in 1999, we could shoot them. And we would have if we felt it was a threat. So this situation was definitely concerning to the crew members. Anything that we couldn't identify, of course, the military at that point, we would take that as a threat. If we can't identify what that is and we can't control what that is, well, that's very concerning for us, and the military would have a problem with that. So I eventually contacted Dr. Stephen Greer because he was holding week-long retreats out in California, out in the desert. So I flew out to Borrego Springs, California in 2011. And at this point, I had been a New York City firefighter for 5 years. I got on in 2006. And I didn't tell the guys in the firehouse at that moment, what I was really into. Maybe, we watched some UFO documentaries, randomly, but nothing. I wouldn't get into what I really thought about it or what I had experienced previously.
Okay.
So I just felt I'd be ridiculed or judged at that point. I wasn't really quite sure how the guys would take that. I grew up on an old school job, and it's not exactly the conversation you have at the kitchen table that you're, you know, communicating with aliens or seeing UFOs on the weekend. I don't know
Yeah,
if
right, right, right.
So you talk about the retreat with Dr. Stephen Greer.
yes.
How did that go that first time? I assume you went, and if you did, how did that go?
Well, what happened was he gives you a non-disclosure agreement basically to sign before you go. And basically, you sign that if anything happens to you, like if you get killed, that you can't sue him. So I thought, whoa, that's pretty
Mm.
interesting. But if we get abducted or something happens, this is pretty serious. But of course, I signed it. I read all his books before I went, and I started doing some meditations. Now, I had never tried to initiate contact myself prior to going to meet Dr. Greer. I had sat and done the meditations, but I wasn't getting anywhere. I had no clue what I was doing until, I figured if I was sitting down with somebody and they were showing me, then I could go somewhere with this, but to just try to do it on my own without any instruction, nah, I don't want to try to initiate contact with some, sort of extraterrestrial race when I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Mhm.
So I figured it was great to fly out there. I flew out to Borrego Springs, and it was incredible. The first night we're out there in the desert, nothing happened, nothing at all. We sat, we looked in the sky, nothing at all. And we did a group meditation. We sat out for a few hours. And I remember coming back to the hotel room that night and saying, wow, maybe I'm ruining the energy in the group. Maybe because I didn't prepare enough or I didn't make contact prior to coming here. The people in the group, some of them were way more evolved. They had been meditating for years and making contact for years. So I was embarrassed. And I'm sitting in the hotel room with my partner, and we fall asleep, and we wake up at about 1 in the morning, and I see this green light flickering on the wall like a flash. So I get up and walk to the wall, and I wake my partner up, and I said, "Do you see this?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "All right, I'm going to go right next to it and try to touch it or whatever." So I go right next to it, and now it's gone. So I said, "All right, it must have just been a smoke detector or a reflection of something." So I go back to bed. Boom, the light comes back. Now the light moves. It moves up and down a few feet. It was about 2 or 3 feet up, then 2 or 3 feet down. So I searched in and outside of that room, looking everywhere for a source of light. Now, be mindful that we're staying in the desert out in California. Okay, we're in the middle of nowhere. There's no outside lights. There's no reflection of anything, but I'm trying to eliminate every possibility before I say it's, something other. So I'm looking around, and this green light just stays. And it stayed literally, it just kept flickering every minute. It would flicker until the sun rose up. So for another 4 or 5 hours, this thing stayed in the room with us. And we go back to the group meeting in the morning with Dr. Greer. Dr. Greer was there. Emery Smith was there. Thomas Jane was there, the actor from the show Hung on HBO. Um, so it was very interesting. We're sitting there, and I'm explaining my experience. And Dr. Greer says, "Well, what do you think you saw?" I said it felt like something was outside the room, like a bigger craft, and they were just sending like a small object in the room to like check us out. That's the feeling I got, but I can't tell you 100% that's what it was because I didn't see anything outside. But if you have to ask, what did I feel and what did I pick up when I started meditating when that happened? Yeah, that's what it felt like. And from that moment on, it just never stops. It was nonstop contacts from that day into the night. We started seeing objects during the daytime. We would see orbs. We would see, balls of light, whether they be green, blue, red, purple, all sorts of colors. We saw apparitions, and I felt like I started to open something up internally. I wasn't quite sure what, did I activate my third eye? I definitely feel that something like that happened. One night we were out in the desert, and we saw like a coyote walking in the distance, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 feet away from the group. And the coyote's out there. It's dead silent. We're doing a CE5. We're making contacts. We have objects appearing in the sky and on the ground. and we see this coyote walking by, and the whole group sees it. We film it, get it on video, and the next day we looked at the video, and there was nothing on the video.
Wow.
And that really blew me away. I said, I know I saw this, and I know that everyone in this group saw this. Now, years later, I didn't know this at the time, but years later I had heard that sometimes a trickster, or the coyote is known as a trickster, will show itself in a different form. And of course, some ET races, maybe, or some interdimensional races might, be tricksters. That is possible too. But at the moment, it was just a special experience. We spent 8 days out there, and I met a contact group in Albany, New York. So coming back from California, I was able to make contact with them. Dr. Greer trusted me a lot, I would say, because at one point during the week-long expedition, one of his security team members had to leave. He had a family emergency, and Dr. Greer asked me and my partner, who my partner was a police officer and I was a firefighter, he asked us to be part of his security detail. Now, people would laugh and say, oh, come on, that's a joke. Well, he also showed us where his 9mm was and how to use it. So I would say that that was pretty serious, the intent of what was going on and what might possibly happen. We were getting observed the week we were there by some other forces, whether you want to call that, I don't know, some black projects that are out there or some shady projects that are out there, but we were definitely under some sort of observation. We definitely picked up a few things being on the security detail. I know that people were definitely following us. We saw them. We had gotten photographs and some license plates, and it was just very odd. So we kind of got an inside look to what Greer went through too. It was more than just making the contact. We saw a lot of things on the inside and outside. And it was very interesting. Thomas Jane, the actor, he was in our group, and he wouldn't speak to anyone in the group, but he came up to me and my partner and spoke with us about an experience he had, which was very similar to like the green light experience that I had had. So we had a special connection there, because it's very difficult to talk about these things, especially obviously being, in the spotlight, someone like Thomas Jane. People are all over you in the media and social media, judging everything and anything you do, which this gets to what happened with me in the article in the paper. When I first started doing this and I met Greer in 2011, I didn't bring back any photos. I didn't show any videos to anybody. I just kept it with the group of friends that I met there and the people that I made contact with in Albany. You're going from 2011 till like 2 years ago. I would drive up to Albany, and every weekend, or at least once a month, we would go up there and make contacts. We started filming and recording, and we were connecting with something other, something other than us. These were, from what I believe, some sort of extraterrestrial beings, and at times some interdimensional beings. And, there is a difference, without a doubt. Greer was very good at showing us to help decipher the differences between, what truly was extraterrestrial and what wasn't. What was the government disinfo stuff and what is the real thing. I'm glad that he taught me, because if I had tried to just figure this out online or through social media, it would have been a disaster. He was very strict the way he trained us. And then coming back home, staying with that crew of people, we just followed the protocols that Dr. Greer had. Basically, you play a meditation, and then you would sit in a group and sometimes hold hands, sometimes not. And you would film if you wanted to. And literally, these lights would just come. But one time in particular I want to share with you guys, I was meditating in the group. This was right after I came back from Dr. Greer's expedition. I'm in Albany. I'm meditating inside. I'm in the group, sitting in a circle. And all of a sudden, I have my eyes open. I like to meditate with my eyes open. That's just how I've done it. I see these purple lights starting to drop down from the ceiling, just like little tic-tac lights. And they're coming down, and they're going towards my chest. And then they are exiting my chest and going back up to the sky. Now, at the time, I thought maybe, I don't know, did I open up my third eye? Am I imagining this? Am I just in an altered state? Am I hallucinating? I don't know. Well, every day since that day, I still see these purple lights. I still see this purple energy. And when I see the energy, I can have contact with the others, if you want to call them the others or whatever they really are. But something got activated in me. I was in that group, and something literally just changed at that point. And from that moment on in 2011, I basically have been able to have contacts, if you want to say at will, like every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's been like a floodgate opened.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there's a lot of information there, and I know, Andrew, you and I have spoken a bit before, and that was one thing I did want to bring up today, was that you say that you have been tested, like your DNA has been at least identified as having something been activated.
Yes. I have been in contact with a few scientists. Through all of this happening, I at one point was being interviewed in 2017, I believe. I was being interviewed on YouTube by a guy named Michael Harrell. Language Lessons of the Heart. He has a page out there. And he was just interviewing me about my experiences. And as he's talking to me, he's saying to me, Andrew, he goes, "You're turning blue." And I said, "What?" He goes, "You're turning blue. The screen, your face and arms are blue now." I said, "What are you talking about? I'm not blue. My skin's not turning blue. That's nuts." So I stopped and I looked at the video camera, and I could see, yeah, it looked like my face and arms were changing color. So we took pictures, we took a video. I left the room, I came back in, and as I was talking about the phenomena and my experiences and some healing experiences that I had experienced with other people, the more I talked about it, the more intense the color got. It would go from like a lighter blue to a real dark blue and almost to a black at points. So I just rolled with this. I just filmed this. We just, filmed the interview. It was like 2 hours long. And I didn't know what to make of it. So I made the mistake of posting it on Facebook and asking people what they thought. So, of course, people, ripped me apart and said, "Oh, you're lying. You're a fraud. You fabricated this somehow." And I said, what are you talking about? I have no idea what this even means. I'm just trying to get answers. Well, I had a friend say to me, "You need to contact Dr. Gary Nolan at Stanford University." And Dr. Gary Nolan, if your audience looks him up, you'll see he's a geneticist, immunologist. He's world-renowned. He's the real deal. He examined that Atacama being in the film Sirius with Dr. Greer. He had that being brought back from Chile. And Gary Nolan did the DNA sequence on that. So I had sent my video and some photos to Dr. Nolan, just trying to get some help, just asking questions. What do you think? And he responded to me and said, "How the hell did you do that?" He goes, "That's not fake. That's you didn't do anything to fake that." He goes, "But what is going on?" I said, "I don't know. I'm asking you. What do you think?" And through talking with him and, working with him, going back and forth, he said to me, he said, "Andrew, we have a brain within our brains, and we call that the antenna." And in the science world, with what he studies, he works with, contactees, especially ones that are antennas, that somehow he feels that we have activated our junk DNA. Scientists might consider junk DNA. We've activated that, turned that on somehow. Sometimes that's through trauma. Sometimes that's through like a contact experience like I had, or sitting in a meditation circle, or a UFO encounter, or an angelic type encounter, or a near-death experience. There's all different modalities of how this can be activated. But he feels that I've activated this somehow. Of course, we don't know exactly how, but he said that I was sending a signal out, and still am sending a signal out, in addition to just receiving. My antenna is two ways. I can receive contact and go out and just, see what's around me, or I transmit this signal through meditation. It could be guided meditation. I could play tones or audio notes, or nothing. I can just get a feeling. I'll be inside. I'll get an internal feeling, or I'll just go outside and project this energy, and the objects are there, or they come pretty fast after, like we saw in these videos that I just filmed. So
Actually, speaking of these videos that are on the screen right now, maybe we could give the people a little bit of context
Sure.
in the videos. What were your impressions when you were recording these videos? Because I know that you already told me that these happen quite often with you. Is that correct?
yeah, if I go outside every night with a camera, I'm filming. And now, of course, most of the time, the things that are seen, they're lights in the sky. So people say, oh, they could be satellites, they could be this, they could be that. I've eliminated all that stuff. I've used the trackers. I've used all that stuff. I know what I'm seeing. These things come, they vanish, they disappear, they change size and shape. But then every once in a while, we'll get a experience where it is just completely different than anything else. And about a week ago, I remember I just started communicating with you, Buster, and we were talking back and forth. And it's interesting. Somebody had sent me a message or commented somewhere like, "Oh, your videos are nonsense. They're just satellites," or whatever they said. They said something to that effect. It was interesting. This happens a lot with me. They said something to that effect, and I did a little meditation. I went outside, and all of a sudden, I started seeing these objects, but these were unlike any other objects that I've been able to capture on film. The rate of speed at which they were moving, and it looked like there were multiple objects that were either playing a game with each other, or were going after each other, or emitting or shooting something at each other. Now, I don't know if this is just playful or a game. Through further analyzing this, like you have done, and I've sent this out to some other people as well. There are a bunch of people that are analyzing this for me. This is how serious this is, because I haven't seen something like this before, and definitely not captured something like this on video. It was a little concerning, to be honest. I just had never seen something striking something else, and then something striking something else, and then it looks like it wobbles and changes course, meaning it was hit. So I don't know what the origin of this was specifically. I don't know exactly where these craft came from or what their origin was, but they were definitely playing some sort of game, and they were changing shape. They would go from something very small to extremely expanded. Now, Q and Buster, I've been trying to explain this to people for years. I would see an object in the distance, maybe 50, 100, 200 feet away, however far away. And literally it was like a second, the object would be hovering 5 feet from my head. And it would be a different shape or size or color. I can't explain how that happened. And when this happens, I have seen this at times where I lived on the ocean in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, New York, near Coney Island. The water would stop moving. I know that sounds nuts, but I saw this. The water was silent. There was no noise out. Some of these objects would come and be floating feet from my head, close enough I could grab them, and literally it was like everything stopped, and my third eye, or what I consider my third eye in between my two eyes, completely locked into this object. And the sense that I was getting was that I was controlling this object. I was controlling the movement of it. And that's the download or the message that I was getting from this, was that this was not by accident. This was not by chance. This was an emission of my, if you want to call it, antenna transmission, sending a signal out, locking in with this object. But it was more than that. I was actually able to control the movement of this object.
So, okay, I have to ask, to go back a little bit, if you don't
Yes.
mind.
Sure.
When you said it was activated, maybe it was your third eye, the internal antenna. Would you say, how would you describe the feeling? Is it like a current that's going through you, or something else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a pull, like like the hair stands up in your neck, like the normal signs of stimulation that you would get. But yet it was different. It was different because when that happened, I started to see through the illusion as well. I started see, literally, like with that feeling, I started to see ripples or breaks in the fabric.
Yeah, yeah. The feeling you're getting, would you say that comes from uh, like from the top down to the bottom, or would you say it comes from the bottom, like to your feet, all the way up, or would you say that it remains somewhere in the third eye or the third eye chakra area? What I mean, I'm just trying to get a handle on that too.
Yeah, say at the bottom of my spine, sometimes I would feel it start there,
Mm-hmm.
or if I was having a visual experience, like if I was seeing something already and then this thing activated, sometimes it cranks up a notch. I could feel literally the hair on my neck stand up and something like a tube. It feels like a tube is opening from here to whatever that is there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, with that, when that would happen, was there ever a time where it was like a muscle and you'd get a headache or you would tire out, or did you ever overwork it? Did you ever feel as if you had gone too far in terms of, like I said, like a muscle, like you've sunburned too much, or you've had too much interaction, or something like that?
Well, this is a good time to add this in, along with all of this around um, 2010. I had met a psychic medium who ended up training me. And after I would do readings on people, when I would see their deceased relatives or contact with the otherness, after I would read them, I would feel exhausted. So that feeling you just said,
Mm-hmm.
yes, some of these contact experiences, it was like it was exhausting. Like I just worked a muscle that I don't work every day. Um, and it's not every time I have contact that I want to say I go there with this. It's not every time. There's once in a while I'll have this experience where I lock in with something. It's not all the time. It would be too much. It would be too much. So, like, I've learned to turn this on and off, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It makes sense. I understand what you're saying. Um, Oh wow. But what do you got, Buster? This is
Yeah,
good.
I
This
know
is.
it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But
Mm-hmm.
there's one thing I did want to bring up was Andrew. You were mentioning earlier the some of the meditations that you were doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you and I spoke previously about you mentioned the gateway meditations, and that was something that we covered here on the show a while back now. But can you tell us some of your experiences with the gateway meditations and what sort of progress that is, you've experienced with it?
Oh, yeah. I am a big fan of it. I want to thank you guys. That's one thing that really turned me on to your show. I remember hearing Q talking about the gateway process. And when I started hearing that along with everything else you've been talking about, I said, okay, this guy's on to something now. Because in 2015, I met with, if you want to consider it a satellite location of the Monroe Institute in New York City, right in the middle of Times Square, this lovely lady was nice enough to open her doors to her home and let us in. And we would sit and we would travel. We would astral travel. We would meditate together. We would communicate with non corporal entities. I'm sure you've heard that term.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Extraterrestrials, interdimensionals. The names, I don't try to get too attached to the names because some people say they're demons, some people say they're angels. It doesn't matter. The otherness, the weirdness, whatever it is, we all had our own individual experiences, yet collectively together we would sit, we would meet bi-weekly, and we would sit inside, right in this lady's apartment, just sit, meditate, travel, go on journeys. Some of us saw each other in, if you want to consider it, past lives or alternate realities. And we would come back and write down and share our experiences. The best results I've gotten with all that was, listening to the guided meditations there. Bob Monroe is just amazing. And actually, now that I'm out here in Australia, I've reconnected with the group they have here in Melbourne. They have another Monroe meditation group, and I've connected with them and started to do group meditations with them. It's an outstanding way for someone to get connected that I would say, has done some meditation. I don't know if I'd want to go in there not doing anything ever. Might be a little overwhelming. I had been around, a few years before I got right into that. But, it's like the power of now with that stuff. It's the same thing, just being present in that moment. We started to see more and more through the illusion and the nonsense that's around us. And that's another way I just found some of the others, some of my tribe, I guess you could say. I made lifelong friends there. And it was just a different take on things. But they're into dream time and travel time. I learned how to astral travel. And like even at night before I go to bed, I'll hold it right before I lay down to go to sleep. I'll hold that state of mind. And when I hold that present moment that I'm in, I'm alert that I'm not asleep, but yet I'm not fully awake either. And I can see myself out of my body, and I have out of body experience. I travel. I've seen co-current realities where literally, like right now, we're here, and I can see myself in, say, a realities that's in black and white from the 1930s, and then in some sort of way futuristic reality, I see myself with structures and people that I have no clue who they are at the moment. But as my life goes on, it's interesting how I meet people, and we start to see that we've had similar type, really strange experiences. And I think the Monroe Group is special that, they've been onto this stuff for many, many years. They're way ahead of many, many institutions that are out there. And they do some amazing work and research. And I'm very happy with them. I've got some amazing results. And I'm going to continue with that. How about you guys? How have your results been?
Well, I guess for me, I started out, with the Power Now, and then a kind of regular meditation. I got into Gateway. From Gateway, I got into more quantum. It's called quantum healing, but I was using some of the methods from Gateway to get me further into the quantum healing. And now it's sort of what you've described is exactly what I do. I can do it in the middle of the day as well as I'll get like a current running through me. That's why I was asking. And I'll know I'm fully awake, and yet I'll be elsewhere. And oftentimes I can't control it, but I've only been doing this for, since the lockdown. But I end up in another office space, and it's really annoying me because I wanted to go somewhere really brilliant and just, you think of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and yet I end up in like a cube farm where I work with other people that I don't know, and it's kind of like, ugh. So, maybe
a little bit humorous, but yeah.
Yeah, but I have found more abstract encounters using the meditation processes. I have found where I will have conversations with people I don't know. I'll all kinds of interesting interactions. Oftentimes, I'm getting to the point where I think it's a mask for something else happening, in terms of. Like I'm not ready or something, or I get that feeling, and there's an interaction there, and it's not hostile by any means. In fact, it's very I wouldn't go as far as saying caring. I would say more like a guide, so to speak, is the interactions, I would say, from Gateway and where I'm at in terms of, but I can drop right in. I know what you mean. I can drop right into it. Now, in terms of this antenna, I've done some quantum work before, and I just end up with these awful headaches. So I don't know if I've been able to channel correctly as of yet. And I certainly can't call anything like visually like you can. So no, it's not nowhere like that. So what about you, Buster?
Yeah, the Gateway documents and the whole thing with that. I mean, we've covered so much information on that. We pulled up so many documents and the meditations themselves. I've used quite a few of them. I haven't used as many probably as you two have, but I definitely have had some results with the astral. Definitely getting some interesting results too, where time seems to accelerate. Plenty of meditations where I've done where, it's 30 or 40 minutes and it seems to go by in like 10 minutes and you're like, wow, did it finish already? So definitely some strange things happening there. Definitely some of the certain focus states definitely put you into that zone where you're not really sure of exactly where your consciousness is, like meaning like, is it in the astral or is it in some other kind of locale? But you definitely end up being in some place where your normal consciousness isn't, and I find that really intriguing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. Like, we can talk about this stuff, and then you had mentioned the documents as well. Once you mention U.S. military, U.S. Army, CIA studying this, then you get the attention of the public. Then the normal mainstream, some people will look into that. We can talk about this all day, but it's interesting the shift that is occurring too with people in the mainstream with this stuff. Whereas, when I got into this stuff, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, I couldn't have this conversation right now.
Yeah.
No way we could be having this talk. I wouldn't do it. Whereas, we're evolving, and more people are waking up. We're not quite where we need to be yet, but there is something occurring, and the Monroe Group has been way ahead of it. They're doing the same thing they did, 30, 40, probably 50 years ago. They're just doing the same thing, and I love that.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because obviously you're much further along than, I guess I'm speaking for Buster and I, because he and I have spoken about this at length before, than we are in terms of the actual experience. Would you say that there is a consistency in all of these experiences? It's just that we're putting different labels like psychic, or we call it UFO, or we call it this or that, because you called it an otherness, meaning it almost, I get the sense from you, the feeling I'm getting from you is that there is this blanket idea, and maybe I'm misreading you, but that's what I sense, and that we're just applying these various labels because they were in different points of time, and they were in different kind of locations, and how people understood things. Would you say that there is a consistency, or do you think it's disparate?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a consistency. There's many different modalities to this, or different terms, or depending on what culture or background you look into. I've traveled all over the world. I mean, I was from Brooklyn. Now I'm in Melbourne, Australia. I've seen everything. I've made contact everywhere, and it's the same message. It's maybe just a different messenger with a lot of the stuff. It seems to be this. They're all going after the same thing. It's either that union or that separation, right? Left-hand path, right-hand path. What are you gonna, or you want to go in the middle? Hey, who cares? You do whatever you got to do. But we can all get to, what we're looking for. We're either looking to, you become the God, you realize you are the God, or you want to merge with, source and be part of. That's great, but the message to me, I think, is the same. The modalities of contacts, they might happen by accident, might be an NDE, or you could, no reason the average person can't do their research, hook up with the team, and initiate contact. But what's interesting is, when you start to do this stuff and you peel the onion away and you go layer upon layer, and as you let go, keep letting go of things, like in the movie Jacob's Ladder, the demons might turn to angels.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I bring that up often because I found, at least in my experience, the idea of a demon comes from this upbringing, I guess, a societal or a cultural upbringing, so to speak. And you're right, you have to break through a barrier, and you have to be very brave to do it. And it's a lot of faith, but it's also a lot of courage. But once you do that, and you peel away that first layer, so to speak, it becomes far less terrifying, and you're able to understand far more. And I call it taking the current. You're able to take the current much more and just let it flow through you, and then that way you can get to sort of the places that I was describing earlier, which that's how I think about it. So yeah, that's great. And I'm glad that you had said that, because Buster and I and Chick, we had talked about this thing called the Round Robin Papers, and it was the first thing that we could find, the first kind of documentation that we could find where they were pairing, in an FBI document, it was a FOIA document, pairing both the esoteric/occult, pairing paranormal, the psychic, and pairing UFO, and saying and bringing up the idea that all of these things were kind of not just they were literally the same thing, and we were just trying to weave together a coherent language for all of us to understand with these kind of phenomena. And that was way back just after World War II, if I remember correctly, Buster.
I think it was 1947, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I want to just quote my buddy Thomas Sheridan here. And with everything that's going on in the world, or even normal when things are going on in the world, or when you're waking up or going through things, Thomas Sheridan had stated that the way out of this is the occult. It's the way that we communicate with each other. We have our own secret language and how to communicate that will surpass AI or anything. We could speak in code. And that is true. We will find the others. We will communicate, occult just meaning culture,
Mm-hmm.
not.
Yes.
There's many different, of course, we know that, but it's a culture, it's a way, it's a method of, going against the grain, not just going with the flow, but, finding out who your true self is, and going back to that movie, Jacob's Ladder, that when you posted that and you talked about all that stuff, I said, that really made a lot of sense for me. And that's so true. We're holding on to all this trauma, this grief, all these horrific things, that we're experiencing in life. But when we start to let go of them, the perception on this contact will change. I know countless abductees that thought they were getting tortured and went through all these horrific things that now, through looking more into themselves, have realized that these things were actually trying to help them and to repair them and to save them. Not every situation, I'm not saying all of them, but people I do know, their perception has changed. The more you go in, the inside reflects the outside. You are the mirror and the reflection. And I think that's the same thing with what we're discussing right now. The more we go internal, the more this stuff on the outside is all going to make sense. And it's going to make sense as to why we're having this conversation at this exact point in time. It's meant to be.
So, you're talking about your experience with Dr. Gris Group, and would you say that these methods and practices that we're talking about, like Monroe, more than just, and obviously you mentioned the meditation and everything, would you also say that it was something akin to the esoteric? And I don't literally mean like something ceremonial. I mean like it was more than just a meditation for calming. It was something that was like Monroe. It was pointed. It was exact. It was something, there was a science to it. There was a methodology to it. Would you say that was there? And if so, could you, whatever you can get into and explain that would be very interesting. I think at least to me, it would be very interesting.
Yeah, sure. We what we do in Dr. Gris Group is we do what's called coherent thought sequencing. So basically, we would sit as a group, and the thought, right, based on the intention we were setting, right? So we'd want to communicate with, just say, a extraterrestrial race that's peaceful, of course, right? Of course. Mm-hmm. So we would project out, and with your mind, you don't even have to say anything, but in my mind, I would literally show something out there, right? Something peaceful and loving out there where I was located. They would show me where they were located, and we would kind of meet in the middle. It's kind of like a radio dial, like a radio station. You're tuning in, I'm on 99, you're on 97. Well, when we both go to 98, now we can hear each other. We meet in that middle point, and that's what this contact was. As a group, collectively, it's tough at times because you have a lot of different energies. It's very difficult to communicate with the same species or to have the same experience, because everyone's individual experience is going to be different. Someone sitting right next to me, they could see a ship in the sky, and I could see 5-foot beings walking around the circle the whole time. And that's happened. So, and people that were 20 years more advanced than me, 20 more years of doing this than me, right when I started doing this, would say, "Oh, Andrew, I see this being right here, that being right here." They would describe them to a T. And I said, "What are these people talking about? That's crazy. There's no ETs walking around. I can't see them." But as I continued to look deeper and deeper into myself, more started to get revealed to me. And I think the coherent thought sequencing is an excellent approach to this. I've heard from people out there from specific agencies that, what if these beings are negative or if they have hostile intent? Well, no matter what they are, trying to battle them or go after them is not the answer, right? Of course, having a loving and peaceful heart is the answer to everything. You have to go in with the right mindset. So the coherent thought, the purpose, the intent of it, and projecting that out and that good intention, to me, you can't go wrong. It's better than projecting out hate or fear or anger or, a destruction on somebody. You don't need to do that stuff. That's nonsense. You don't need to hurt anybody. And then you will get back what you put out as well. I think Greer was very clear about that if you're not in a good state, if you're going through something in your life personally, that, you might think you're seeing reptilians or something coming after you, a thought form. And it may not be real at all. It's something that you're creating in your mind and that it got produced from stress, Seeing a ghost running in the room and it's not even there. So that is accurate too. You got to be I try to be very careful when people tell me a story. Oh, I had this one encounter and it was with this awful being. And then I ask them, well, what else is going on in your life? Oh, I was going through a divorce, or I lost my job, so, okay, well, let's look at all the pieces here. Maybe that's weighing on you psychologically, and then you might think you're seeing something that's negative. Whereas when you go to a better state of mind, or you actually do the work, and after you do the work on yourselves, that perception starts to shift.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, there's a term like shadow work, and there's different kinds of terms for that, but you've really got to master the fear. You've got to master your dark side. You've got to accept it, and then you can master it. And if you accept it, you certainly can master it. And I think that would be a really great prerequisite for anybody going into this is to kind of teach them that this thing's kind of separate, but it's part of you. It would be a really good idea to master that. It's really hard to do, but once you do that, you'll be able to, every single time, you'll be able to kind of tamp it down. And by doing that, you'll have a more, a pure experience. It would, through less filters of trauma, you'll be able to see the experience more, That's really interesting you were saying that, because I've heard people say that before when they've had an experience, and then inevitably if you ask, if you dig further, if it's a negative experience, inevitably you're right, there's something else going on there, or they're still, it was such a shocking thing, they hadn't trained themselves to reorient themselves in thinking to like what we're talking about. It takes time, and it takes a lot of effort, so that's very, what I find though is, I don't know about you, Buster, but, I don't know, maybe it was, I had some traumatic events, and so maybe I had a switch turned on, but, we kind of, we sought this out, Buster, where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, in a lot of ways, there are no coincidences. I've said this before on Twitter, and regardless of whether you experience a lot of unexplained phenomena, or you have sightings of different things, or you have a traumatic event happen to you, or that only you experienced. I think a lot of it is whether we're aware of it or not. I think a lot of it is caused by our own intentions. Things that we're not really aware of on a deeper level. Maybe the conscious level is busy doing something else and is preoccupied. But the more you quiet the mind, the more you're aware of things that you weren't aware of before. And I think that has a lot to do with like what you were saying with the shadow work. So yeah, I mean, a lot of things we've done on the show, we've probably inadvertently caused certain things to happen, and like I've said before, sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
So Andrew, since would you say from the time that you started these experiences until now, you talked about the internal reflecting the external, would you say that you've been able to understand and better enhance your internal workings? And if so, by doing that, would you say your external life has improved? And I'm not talking, like, if you want to include that, that's fine, like, materially, but also just in general, the way you see things, the sparkle on things, the way, you've noticed nature or something like that. Can you kind of talk to us about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, you definitely get a greater appreciation for things when you do this work. I had lost a best friend at the age of 5 and a best friend at the age of 13. So I feel that part of my journey was, going through some of these traumatic things and maybe stuffing them or having them just be recessed in me and just kind of thinking like, well, it happened and I'm just moving on and I'm fine though. And then the work that I've done, I'll be able to, address those areas and appreciate the beauty of life and to, be able to handle those things appropriately too now, being an adult now. When something comes up, you have to address it. That's it. You can't be attached to hold on to anything. I was broken into the psychic world by a pretty strict medium, an Irish medium out in Long Island, New York, and the guy was very, very strict. Was not into UFOs. Did not like that at all. He said, "Stay away from that stuff. It's a lot of nonsense." I understand what he means, but this is just my journey. I had to go on my journey. But he was very rigorous and very demanding with the way he trained us. And I'm grateful for that today. I get to appreciate that today, Doing this work, though, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't have been the same person that I am today. Like you said, seeing the glistening on things or just seeing the beauty in things and, realizing the separation in things and then the unity in things, too, the difference, too, seeing that, we're having these beautiful individual experiences. And if we choose to tap into that and, respond to that and appreciate it, great. And if we don't, that's fine too. I guess I've been more respectful of people's spaces and what they want to do with their path, as opposed to you have to go this route, because Fox News is saying this, we have to go this route, we have to do this. Whereas now, seeing what I've seen and going through what I've been through, I don't hold on to that stuff. I don't just, go with the masses so much. The material stuff is irrelevant. I don't need any more proof. I know, in my mind at least, on my experiences, that we're eternal beings and that we're here for a fractal. We're here for a fractal of what is. That's how I like to look at it. This is a very short time, and there really is no time. And just try to enjoy every day and, make the most of it, because where am I going after here? Can't say for sure, right? I'm not there yet. I don't know. I have some ideas, I've had some experiences, but nobody truly knows until we get there. So it's just nice to be, mindful and stay grounded and grateful of where we're at today. And this work, though, doing this stuff and this inner work, that's essential for making contact. I thought I just want to go out and communicate with extraterrestrials or interdimensionals or angels or whatever out there, gods, masters, all this stuff. But for me, I couldn't have just done that. I had to address this stuff because it's also interesting being around this stuff for years. I see people that don't do the work on themselves, and that's just very easy. You meet people that are awake or evolved, or they claim to be awake and evolved, and then you see how they treat others or how they treat you off camera, and you know that they're not doing the work. I just don't have time for that. You gotta live it the way you are on camera and the way you are behind this mask and behind this computer screen. If you're not walking the walk and talking the talk, I mean, what good is it then? It's just the other nonsense that you claim you're trying to get away from. So it's not the path, it's like the journey of getting to this path, like you have to let go of it, then you can go on the path. Can't just jump into the path, the work. Any good esoteric school, or, if you initiate anywhere, any good school is going to tell you, this is a lot of psychological work that you're going to be doing at first, going to be breaking you down and letting go of all the nonsense and, sitting in silence. I know Buster's had some Buddhism experiences and background with that. I went to a Buddhist school in Brooklyn for a couple of years, and that was a great experience. I got a lot out of that, I thought I went in there. It's interesting. You think you go in there for one thing, right? You want the answer to this or that, and then what you get out of it is beyond your wildest dreams. You weren't even possibly expecting what you got out of it. When you walked in there, your intention was one thing, but when you do the work on yourself, you realize that you're in control of it. It has nothing to do with your circumstances.
So do you think, the kind of moving away from that real quick, do you think the encounters are they're picking up? Do you think it's sort of a steady pace? We just have better communications? Do you think, there's a lot of talk of Earth leveling up and, all kinds of other things. Where do you stand on those kinds of issues? Kind of a group thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that contact is picking up exponentially. I've never seen it this intense. I think with everything that's going on in the world, all the chaos and all the negative energy, it's also an incredible time to manifest and to, make magic happen. And if you want to make something happen in the universe, this is the time to pull it out of the field, because everyone, whether they realize it or not, is contributing their energy to that giant energetic field that's out there. So if you want something, you could do a working or a manifestation or a ritual or whatever your thing is out there, sit in silence. But if you really focus your intent on something, with everything that's going on, it's happening. And I've been doing that little bit by little bit the last few months. I've been honing in on that because, we're at a point now. I don't know. I can't say for sure, what is going to happen. But I know this overall feeling of anxiety seems to be riding through everybody. If you talk to pretty much anybody and everybody, and people I know in the contact world, we feel like we're getting closer and closer to some sort of, whether it's a disclosure or some sort of event. But yeah, it definitely feels like we're moving in that direction. The monoliths that are going on, whether they're nonsense or they're just a lesson for us or a message, but things like that, there's going to be more and more, high strangeness occurring. And it's meant to be. We're in 2020. Now, I think 2020 might just be a preview for 2021. So we'll see.
You bring up a very interesting point, too. There's also been a lot of talk, too, about the veil thinning. And, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, with everything that you've seen and experienced, do you think that the veil is, in fact, thinning and that, these sheets of glass, so to speak, are becoming thinner and thinner?
Oh, yeah, there's cracks. There's cracks in the glass between every level, without a doubt. There's more and more cracks. And kind of like, I watched that show, Man in the High Castle. Very, very, wow, on point. Just very interesting take on things. And I think we're dealing with something like that with all these Mandela effects that are out there that continue to happen. It's almost like we're pulling things into this reality. We're pulling things in, ideas that we have. I can personally speak on that. There are some things that I've written out a few months ago. So some things that I literally wanted to manifest into this reality, and I have been doing that. And at the end of a few months, I'm going to share that with people and show them what I said and what I wanted to do, what my intention was at this point. And these things are actually literally happening now. And I think that the glass is cracking, and I hope that, obviously, I hope it doesn't break all the way, but I think eventually it has to, and there'll be some sort of reset or whatever happens when this falls apart. What do you think, Q?
I think we were getting incredibly close to it last year, and something changed around last July. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it happened, but I felt as if we were going in one direction, and then we went off on a side road, and obviously 2020 hit. And yeah, I think 2021 coming up, it's probably us getting back on the highway, so to speak. So yeah, I agree with that. But again, I'm looking through my own lens, and I'm kind of, with the way people communicate about some of these encounters, I'm still not entirely convinced that we're all encountering the exact same reality like we used to know it. I don't think that's actually what's happening. Like, I think that the body, and I've said this before on the channel over and over again, but it bears repeating, I think the body and the brain is more or less like an antenna, and we're in the dark, and, you kind of shine a light on something, and then someone else's eyes shine a light on the same thing, and then we kind of make an agreement on what that thing is, but it's only a representation of that thing. It's not the actual thing. There are a lot of philosophy it has been involved with stuff like that, but I think that that's more or less the case. So you were talking about the tricksters and coyote and all that. I totally, or someone has a certain kind of encounter versus someone else, and though you seem like you're in the same area together, that doesn't necessarily mean the encounters are going to be exactly the same. And I think small examples of that were starting to pop up with the dress, whether it was silver or it was blue. You have the Mandela effect, and all these kinds of things. That was the very beginning of the crack, so to speak, happening. And I do think that there's going to be an acceleration of those kinds of things. But then again, I'm getting deeper into my different kinds of practices. So obviously I'm seeing different things as well, so I'm more conscious of that as well. However, you can see just and on a group level, people say it over and over again in different formats and videos and just casual conversation that we're never going back to the same place after the pandemic is over, and assuming the vaccines go out and everything goes okay. I know there's a whole group of thought with that, but let's just assume the mainstream way of thinking about all this comes to fruition. What comes afterwards will probably be a great stage to set for something very different. And I was listening to Dave Chappelle just today, in fact. Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle were talking, and he said something really profound, I thought. He said, you're stuck in sometimes a small apartment with the choices that you've made, whether it's your spouse or your life partner and your pets, your children, career, all of those things. You're sort of stuck with those things right now, and you're into this forced introspection, whether you like it or not, because we're all 8-9 months into this thing. So I think this we can't play down the fact what's happening to us in the exterior with the pandemic and the beating that we've all had mentally and emotionally and psychically and all of those other things. So that's my feeling on it. I know that's a bit me kind of playing the fence and playing it safe, that internal versus external, but you always have to take that kind of, like you said, the middle pillar. You've got to balance both of those out. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. What about you, Buster?
Lately for me, I've been trying to, do the internal work as well, and just sort of not get sucked in by all of the drama and all of the chaos going on. I was actually talking to Chick the other day about this, about just, acknowledging everything that's happening, be aware of it, but don't let it consume you, because it's so easy to get, pulled into all the drama, and then to want to be constantly checking the news every few minutes, or checking Twitter every few minutes, or whatever it is that you consume to try to keep yourself, in that state of mind. But eventually you kind of discover that state of mind is probably more detrimental to your overall wellness than it is in any kind of way beneficial. So, lately I've just been sort of realizing that it's okay to, be aware of what's going on, just acknowledge it. Don't have any kind of, overall, don't overreact to it. Just acknowledge it, and then continue on with whatever it is that I want to create. What do I want to create today? That's kind of where I'm at right now.
All right. So, Andrew, what do you think? Where do you go from here? Both in internally and in your external life. What's on the horizon for you?
Well, it's interesting because I never intended on, ending up in a newspaper. That kind of just happened. I got a phone call from the New York Post one day, and they said, "We're printing an article about you tomorrow. We want to comment." And I said, "Well, what are you printing, and what are you talking about? Who is this?" And they wouldn't tell me what was said in the article. They just wanted me to make a comment about, claiming that I'm psychic or whatever. I said, well, I don't know what you're writing. You're not telling me what the article is. I don't even know who you are. This doesn't sound right. So I called the fire department, and they had my back. And luckily, that all worked out. And a couple weeks later, boom, they wrote the article anyway. So it kind of just happened. And then this opened up a bunch of doorways for me. I ended up speaking in Australia at a conference, a consciousness conference, 2 years ago. And I just stayed. Here. I met a girl, got engaged, got married, had a baby. So I'm staying here in Australia. And of course, ultimately, I want to continue to get this message out now, because it's at a different point now. It's not just merely me talking on Facebook and trying to get some info. It's at a different level now. So ideally, yeah, I would like to continue to pursue this, and I would love to get together with people and make like group contact. Just have people get together, film stuff, record stuff. I feel we're going in that direction. Demi Lovato did a contact event with Dr. Stephen Greer a couple weeks ago. That was massive. And if somebody like that can get together and do that, I think we're heading in that right direction of part of the vision I had, which was, this is a peaceful means of trying to communicate with something spiritual. Whatever it is, that's up to people to decide what this is or it isn't. And whether I just sit in my yard and make videos and hang out with people and do it here, or I did it on a TV screen and showed people all across the world, I would be glad to do that too. I feel that adamant about it, and that that happy about the way this has turned out. That I have some visions of some things of where we're headed with this. I want to continue to do this. I want to continue to spread this message, and just have people continue to go in. The most gratifying thing is people will just call me up randomly from wherever in the world. Other people that were cops or firefighters, and just say, hey, thank you, man. I've experienced something really strange like this at work, but I can't talk about it. But hearing you share your stories, man, this really inspired me to either open up about this or to know that I'm not alone. And for me, that's like good enough. That's good enough for me. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I will continue to meet more people like yourselves, and more amazing doors will open up. I have talked with some people about formulating this to put it into a type of TV series, or I even spoke with, I'm sure you heard the movie Communion with the Whitley Strieber film. I saw that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I spoke with the guy who made that, Philip Mora. He had contacted me, and we spoke about possibly putting this into a production like that, because I've had experiences at work, literally, where I got off the fire truck one night, and I was about to go into a building that was on fire with 4 guys at my firehouse, and my grandmother, who has passed away for many years, I saw her apparition appear, and she said, do not go in that building. And we were ordered to go in by a chief, and you don't disobey an order from a chief. You don't do that. You just never do that. But something told me, don't go in. And I looked at the guys I was with, and I said, hey, hold on 1 second. And 40 seconds later, fire blew out of every window in the place. If we had gone in, we would have been killed.
Let me pick up on that.
Yeah.
Would you say that those were in your firefighter days, and now you're further along on your path here?
Yep.
Do you have consistent contact now with some kind of guides or anything like that? Is there, or is it just it's situational and whatever you're doing at the time? Is there any kind of consistency to the contact?
For me, it varies. A lot of this is family. A lot of times I will communicate with relatives on the other side and just get confirmations, guidances. So that's a relative one that I will go to a lot, is somebody that I knew that passed away. I've always had this special bond with the spirit world. I just always have, and I've been shown how to make contact with that. So I do that on a daily basis. And then as far as the contact, it just depends on the setting and situation. I've had people from my contact group come over and we'll reach out and see what we want to communicate with that night. So now it can vary.
Is it always, you said you're able to turn it on and off now, but, do you mean turn it off in terms of the internal feeling, or can you still have that off and still have communication, meaning you'll see someone or someone or an entity or something will recognize that you're able to make contact and make it without you reaching out first? Is it, how does that work?
Yeah, it's like when I want to go into that zone, I literally will just tell myself internally, like, okay, and I get a feeling like going up my spine or in that top neck or bottom of my spine area, and boom, I can have communication. Or if I don't want to, like if I'm at work and I don't want to have that kind of contacts. I'm an embalmer in the funeral industry. So obviously I don't want to be walking around work, communicating with spirits all day at work, right?
Yeah.
So I just go and do my thing. I do my job, and that's it. I turn it off there. People are like, oh, you must have them coming through all the time there. And no, I'm all business when I'm at work. I do my thing and that's it. So yeah, I turn it on and off.
Have you ever had any kind of like esoteric or occult work, like ceremonial magic or anything like that?
Yeah, I've looked into many different paths. Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, sure, everything. And I've met people along the way that, were into that stuff and didn't do it. But yeah, I've experimented. I've tried all sorts of things on my road.
Yeah. Wow. All right, Buster.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, Andrew, was that how did you end up on the channel here? I mean, I know you kind of briefly touched upon that, but I mean, what was it about this channel? Because I know you said before to me, like you've had some offers to go on some live streams and some shows, but you kind of turned them down. So, what is it about this show that interested you?
Well, it was very interesting. I remember just hearing about the Mandela effect and hearing about Q. I remember I found out about the channel. I'd heard about the Mandela effect somewhere, and I came across a podcast that Q did on demonosophy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is a great podcast too. I look at all angles of this. There's nothing that I won't look into. I feel the greatest weapon is knowledge and the power of that knowledge. So I look at everything and go everywhere. And I heard what you said on there, which I thought it was interesting that he had you on, and vice versa. It was just a cool dynamic. And then I got more into listening to what you were saying, what Q was saying about this. Followed your channel, and yeah, I mean, I've gotten offers to go on a lot of different networks and stuff, and turn that down, and won't do work with certain people. But the connection that I felt immediately when I started talking with Buster. Immediately, I knew that this was the show to go on. I didn't know if it could happen, of course, right? Everything has to align for this to align perfectly to happen, to have this even go down. And it just did. So I just said, well, you know what? I knew that I know you guys are being genuine, the way that you came across. I mean, psychically or energetically, you could say I picked up on that. I could do that with people. So I shy away from some people, but I knew that what you were saying and the things that you experienced with what your handler was telling you or your contact was telling you a little while ago, some things you were being told.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very familiar with those types of situations. I've had several situations like that with people where these things did come true, and then sometimes where these people disappear and all that stuff. So I felt that connection there with you too, and I really wanted to have this conversation and do this here. I didn't want to, I had an opportunity to go on the news and a couple other things and talk about these videos that I just filmed recently and a couple other channels, but I wanted to do that here first with you guys. I felt that it was crucial. And I know that the last video you did, Q, it was called Losing Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to just express to you that the experiencers, right, like myself, I just consider myself an experiencer. That's all I am. I'm a dude with an experience, and I'm talking about it. And to me, we, the experiencers, are the key to all of this. The government, the insiders, all that stuff out there, they can't do anything without us. And if we as the people, if the experiencers, if we lead the way, the leaders and the government people, they'll be forced to follow us. So it's very important that we're doing this the way we're doing this, because they will come along. They will come and they will follow right behind us. We don't need to go to them. They will find us, they will come to us, and they'll ask us, how are you doing this? And I think it's so important at the times we're in for us to stay tight with the group of people we have and to continue to educate and challenge each other, to prove the existence that, no, we're not alone. We've known that. That's very clear. And there's nothing wrong with sharing, your experience with this along the way. There's nothing wrong with looking to, esoterica, occult stuff, angelic stuff, fairies, angels. I don't care what you're into. It doesn't matter. I'm seeing a consistency. And if we could, put aside all that judgment of, oh, communicating with this or he's that, if we just hear what we're doing, the modality, I think that this contact experience with these others, the beings, the ETs, I think that this can unify. It has the potential to unify us. It has the potential. The division that's out there right now, that's going on in the world, is just going to create further division and hatred, whereas this can take people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, and through meditation and coming together and healing, this has the potential for us to heal each other and to come together. Nothing else does.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think 2 points too that you were talking about. You could psychically, feel where we're coming from and that we're genuine. And that's something, I think that needs to get across more, particularly for content makers and things like that, that there's no real privacy, not really. If you're, like you were saying, if you're coming from a place where you're not genuine, and that's what I talked about in that I think I did in that last video, or the last 2 or 3 videos I've talked about, there are people who aren't genuine. And, I know enough now to where I know that you don't really have a lot of privacy per se, and that's not people looking in on you or anything like that. I'm just saying on a psychic level, on an astral level, on different kind of bodies that you have, people can tune into that very easy. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. That's one point, and then that's for the external, and then the internal is, the fear that runs rampant inside of you. It can be controlled. It's something separate. It's still part of you, but it can be controlled. And, a lot of people, they're servants to that, to the fear and the anger. And it's like, you don't have to be, but, I'm already at the other side of that. So it's like, I know I don't want to sound trite. I don't want to sound glib saying that, but it can be done. It's hard to do, but it can be done. It was hard for me, at least, but it can be done, the fear and all the other things. So just kind of piggybacking on that, yeah, it can happen, and it can, in each person, it does change. It's not a Hallmark card. You can change the world just by changing yourself quite a bit. So I just wanted to add on to what you're saying with that.
Yeah, I mean, fear can be weaponized, and look at what we all just went through, no matter where you're at in the world, someone or at least personally, or a good friend, somebody probably is going through a horrible time right now, and that has a resonant effect, that has a ripple effect on everything around us, am I going to be the maniac running to the store buying toilet paper just because everyone else is?
Yeah,
no.
Right.
Really, I when it all went down and I went to the store one day, I said, I'm not doing this. Is insane. I said, what about the old man down the street that could barely walk here? He needs toilet paper. I don't need toilet paper. I don't need a can of food. He does. I'm fine. So we could do these little things, right? And then collectively that has a massive effect. Sometimes you don't realize how much of an impact we actually have, but we can have a giant impact. We're not going to agree on everything, but if the answer is hate and fear and war and blowing things up, that is the ETs. They're going to make a U-turn if we keep this up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's, people ask me, they said, oh, are they coming? Are they landing? I said, they're going to turn around if we keep this up, because why would any race outside of this world, why would anyone, would you want to come here if you were looking at Earth? Would you want to come and land here and talk to us right now? Would you want to go land in Seattle or Portland? What, are you kidding me? And think you're going to get loved? Come on. We got to do better than this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
Nicely said.
Yeah, well said. Buster, if you want to wrap up, I mean, we could probably do this right about now.
Sure. I think we've pretty much covered almost everything that I wanted to bring up. But if people wanted to get more information on you, I know, Andrew, you're on Twitter. I guess they could follow you there, or do you have any other place that people can find more information on you?
Oh, yeah. If any social media, I'm on, I think all of them by my name. So you'll just see, Andrew Radziewicz. I'm not hard to find. And yeah, no problem. People want to reach out to me. They have questions. No problem. They want to have a conversation. No problem. What really helped me too was I realized there's a huge connection with UFOs and the occult. It's a very interesting thing that I've researched a lot on. Whereas if I just looked into UFOs this whole time, I don't know if I would have gotten some of the answers that I found out by going down different avenues and pathways and meeting people from all walks of life, regardless of what your religious or personal beliefs are. It doesn't matter to me. I'm curious that, okay, how is this impacting your life? And what you're learning, are you able to show this to other people to help them impact their lives? You're just staying in the basement, not leaving the house, then I'm not talking to you. But I know that we collectively, I really want to stress that we have so much power if we can put aside the nonsense and make this peaceful contact. This is a way. Dr. Bria told me if we got 1% of the population to meditate, he said that could cause a shift in consciousness. And somebody like Demi Lovato with, millions of followers, hundreds of millions of followers, if she can get her followers to do a CE5 or meditate or make contact, well, from what Dr. Gris said, maybe we have the potential to cause a shift in consciousness. And you know what? It's worth a shot, because I want a better life for my daughter. I want a better life for my kids than what I'm seeing right now. I'm ashamed of where we're at as a society, and this has to change for the better. We're capable of much better than this as a society. So, sorry I went on a little rant there, but I just wanted to close off with that.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that as well.
Yeah, that's a great way to close it out, and I concur. 1%. I've always felt it's a very low number that could turn this whole thing around. So I don't want to drag it out. You ended it perfectly, and Andrew, you're always invited back on. If you want to come back on, and if something comes up and you want to talk about it, reach out to us. And just, it's an open invitation is what I'm saying. So we really, really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, there's a couple things coming up in the future. I'm sure I'll be back on some real cool stuff that's going to be unfolding. So, yeah, as it comes, we'll take it from there. And I just want to thank you and all your awesome listeners for staying connected out there. Thank you.
All right, that's wonderful. All right, Buster, I'm going to wrap this thing up. And everybody, thank you for coming on. And we will catch you next time. Thanks.